Hey everybody, welcome to the OMG Tarot podcast. The last two episodes got me thinking a bit. There is a ton of Judeo-Christian imagery in the Rider Waite Smith deck. And yeah, that's because its predecessors came from Europe and what was the dominant culture and religion during that time. So it's not a surprise that we see a lot of Judeo-Christian things and biblical references as shorthand in the deck, but what if that's not your culture and that just doesn't resonate with you? It can be kind of difficult to look at some of this symbolism and have to suss out what it means when you don't have that cultural framework for seeing, oh, this is a dove holding a Eucharist on the Ace of Cups. I have kind of an internal understanding of what these symbolize, and then that internal understanding then shapes how I interpret this card. Well, fortunately, not every deck is the Rider Waite Smith, and not every deck is based on it. And in fact, there are plenty of decks that are vaguely based on the Rider Waite Smith that either replace these symbols with symbols from other traditions or replace them with things that are completely not rooted in tradition. Like, for example, the cat and dog tarots. I've got the cat tarot right here on my desk, and I just opened it up. The top card is Justice, and the image is of a cat biting a human hand. This deck is pretty literal. Justice is being served. You pet the cat's belly. After the cat rolled onto its back and presented its belly, you made a mistake, and now justice must be served. You're getting bit. So in this episode, I'm going to walk you through a couple of other decks that I think are really great alternatives to the Rider Waite Smith if the Rider Waite Smith doesn't resonate with you for some reason. Or even if it does and you just want more decks. Honestly, Rider Waite Smith is not my daily driver. I use the Star String Tarot all the time because I love it so much. But yeah, that's what this episode's going to get into. For a lot of readers, decks that work with pagan or Wiccan or anything kind of in that category of imagery tend to hit really well because that's the world a lot of us are coming from. I think there's also a lot of room in this discussion to talk about appropriation and adapting different cultural traditions and ideas to kind of fit a modern worldview, and I don't have all the answers on that. I do know that a lot of what we kind of take at face value as pagan here in the Western Hemisphere is directly lifted out of ancient Celtic traditions. If you go back to the episode about the Wheel of the Year, that's their wheel. It's a modern development, but it's directly lifted out of the British Isles and just out of Europe more broadly. And that's not everybody's ancestry and everybody's culture, so I just want to be very careful to separate the European pagan traditions from kind of broad brushing it as, oh, these are all pagan traditions, because they're not. That's one specific subset, and unfortunately, that one tends to take up a whole lot of space in community discussions when we should also be looking at other traditions from other parts of the world. As far as working with symbolism from this Celtic-inspired pagan realm, though, a couple of good recommendations I have for you are the Robin Wood Tarot, the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot, and the Druidcraft Tarot. In fact, the more I look at the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot, the more I'm like, I want this deck. This deck is beautiful. This illustration style is so up my alley. And that's another thing to keep in mind as you look for decks as well. Find one that not only does the symbolism resonate with you, but get to know what's your art preference. Over the years, I've come to realize I like saturated colors. I like more simplistic drawings. I don't really find I resonate with photography decks. And there are some very cool ones out there. One shout out is Tarot of the Boroughs. Every single image is a photograph of a scene happening in New York City, and it fits together to make the whole 78 card deck. It's super cool, and just for whatever reason, photos don't really do it for me when it comes to reading tarot. But as far as decks really tied innately to place, if you live in New York or used to live in New York, this can be a really awesome deck because you have that cultural shorthand of different places and different experiences that only happen there. So this could be a totally awesome deck for you. I just did a quick look to see if there are any other decks that are just about a specific city, and I found the Philly Tarot deck. So check that one out if you live in or have strong ties to Philadelphia. This one is very, very pop culture, and it's a pretty much direct clone of the Rider Waite Smith, but it's got some cool images in it, like the death card I'm seeing, it's got Edgar Allan Poe on, and for those who don't know, he lived there for a while. I know he's more commonly associated with Baltimore, but he also lived in Philly for a bit. One deck that I really like that gets away from this European look of the Rider Waite Smith is the Santa Muerte Tarot. This deck is largely based on traditions surrounding Day of the Dead, and just as a whole really draws a lot from Mexican culture and folklore. The colors are bold and saturated, and the illustrations are really highly detailed. It's such a rich deck to look at. I also want to call out the publisher of this deck, Los Garebo, because if you're looking for decks that work with imagery from cultures from around the world, Los Garebo publishes a lot of decks like that. I'm taking a look through tarotarts.com right now, and I'm finding, oh, every deck that fits this category, what do you know? They all happen to be Los Garebo decks. Which I actually want to shout out that website too, tarotarts.com. This is my favorite place to scroll through and just look at different decks and find inspiration and fill up my cart with decks that I would love to buy but don't have a budget for right now. This website, it's huge. It's got everything, and I like that you can sort by what category you're looking for. No, they didn't sponsor this episode. I just legitimately really like the website. But anyway, take a look at the World Cultures category. That's where you're going to find decks that work with imagery from all over the world. Do you want a deck that works with the Norse pantheon? You got it. You want a deck that has Native American imagery? Go for it. You want something that the images look like they came from Tsarist Russia? Hey, you got it. This is also a website where you can find reproductions of older decks like the Tarot de Marseille and the Piacentini Tarot. I even saw a reprint of the Solabusca Tarot, which that's a really cool deck. I think maybe sometime in the future I'll pick up my own copy, because the Solabusca Tarot, that's the deck that inspired a lot of the illustrations we see on the modern Rider Waite Smith. This is often considered the first deck to have a fully illustrated minor arcana. So now, what if you're looking for a deck that doesn't really have an association with any kind of culture or pantheon or tradition? Well, I actually really want to shout out the Wild Unknown Tarot. This deck is gorgeous, and it's very popular. Somehow, it is not in the OMG Tarot library, which I don't know how it didn't make it in here, because I feel like every reader I know has a copy of this deck. It's very nature-based. You're going to see drawings of animals and trees and sticks, and it's largely black and white, but with pops of color that were done in what appears to be colored pencil, and it has such a cool texture to it visually. I love this deck. As far as the imagery it uses, I would put it kind of adjacent to a pagan deck, because while it doesn't work directly with any sort of symbolism like the Green Man or the Oak King or anything like that, it kind of has that feel of, all right, if this deck were aligned with any sort of tradition, it wouldn't be out of place with that kind of tradition. That's just my perspective. Maybe the artist had a very different idea, but this is a good one to check out if you're looking for something very nature-based and just has a modern feel without directly referencing our modern world. As I mentioned, it's all animals and nature, so you're not going to see any smartphones, cars, any indication of human life in this deck. So now, what if you do want smartphones and cars in your tarot deck? Take a look at the Modern Witch Tarot. This one, in a lot of ways, is a Rider Waite Smith clone, but it's updated for the 21st century, and it's actually already looking a little dated, so it's a little interesting. It's your modern option, but it was printed in the 2010s, and it feels like it, which I don't think is a bad thing. It has a very, very millennial look, so if you want to play with a tarot deck that's got women in ripped leggings and the poor victim of the Ten of Swords lying on her side scrolling on her phone, check this deck out. It's perfect for that. I also want to shout out the Voyager Tarot because, well, this is another deck that I don't personally have a copy of or use. I've been taking a look at it online for the purposes of this episode, and it's so cool. It's got a very modern feel, and it's like collage style, so it's photographs, illustrations, a little of this, a little of that, but it's so bright and colorful and fun. And now here's something that is just a bit of a personal preference for me. I like decks that stick with the original suits. I don't know why. I just often find I'm most drawn to decks that keep them as pentacles, cups, swords, and wands. Other decks, they get creative, and I have a couple in my collection that get creative, but sometimes when I'm like, wait, the 10 of crystals, what's going on here? Or like the 5 of, what is that, coffee cups? So that's totally personal preference. This deck does switch things up a bit. This deck, instead of pentacles, it has worlds, and instead of swords, it has crystals. But it's super cool, and it's, I guess we can call it culturally neutral because it doesn't draw from any one particular culture, so it's kind of universal in that sense. Another way to work with tarot decks that have absolutely no cultural association is to work with ones that only feature animals. There are a ton of them. There's the crow tarot, the dog tarot, the cat tarot, so many. I have one that I really, really love called the Animal Totem Tarot, and as you might guess, every single image is animals. It's great. It's fun. I love it. Now, with a lot of decks like this, because you don't really have that shorthand that you're getting from a deck, say, like the Rider Waite Smith, there's a lot more looking at the picture and understanding it intuitively that way. Now, of course, this varies from deck to deck, and of course, there's plenty of symbolism baked into them, but you're not going to have that same frame of reference for this specific vocabulary, which that's actually why I always recommend that beginning readers at least start with the Rider Waite Smith. You don't have to stay there, but having that, even if it doesn't immediately resonate with you, it's at least good to have like that framework so that way you can kind of work off it and get yourself immersed in the world of tarot vocabulary. Here's one thing that I've actually developed a pretty strong opinion about in all my years of doing and teaching tarot. I don't like decks that have words on them that describe what's going on, like keywords. There are a lot of beginner's kits that you'll see. It'll be basically a Rider Waite Smith deck with a white border that has a couple of keywords. I think those stifle you because your eye is automatically going to go to that keyword and you're going to find yourself relying more on memorizing than working with the image. And then you're not reading tarot, you're reading off some tarot cards. So I know people like them and they see them as an easy, kind of essentially training wheels, but I actually think they're going to hinder you in the long term more than they're going to help you. Which is also why I don't recommend running straight to the book as soon as you turn a couple cards. Try your best to work out what's going on there. Take a look, describe the pictures. The book is there to support you, and I like it as a way to check your work. But if you're running to it just to define it, I think you're not going to develop the skill sets necessary to really work with the cards without the book. If I were to list off every single tarot deck that exists, this podcast would be days and days long. And if I were to list off every deck that I like and personally use, this deck would be, maybe an hour long? I don't know. Just a couple of favorites from my collection. I love the Morgan Greer Tarot. It's basically kind of an updated Rider Waite Smith. It's very bold, saturated. It's a very colorful deck, and that's what I like. It still plays with a lot of similar symbolism to the Rider Waite Smith, but it's updated, and it also drops a lot of it too. A couple others, well, I really like the Deviant Moon deck by Patrick Valenza. It's spooky, it's scary, but it's like whimsical and fun. It's spooky and scary in the way that the Haunted Mansion is at Disney World. Other than those, I think those are really kind of the roundup of my daily drivers right now. It would be Starstring, Morgan Greer, Animal Totem, and the Deviant Moon. And now, when I'm doing a gig, be it someone's bridal shower, birthday party, anything like that, I tend to try to get a feel for what's the vibe of this party, because then that informs which decks am I going to bring. A deck that's very appropriate for a warehouse rave might not be the one that's best for a bachelorette brunch. I'll give you an actual real-life example. I was at a warehouse rave last week, and it was super duper fun, and that was the perfect environment to bust out the Cat and Candy Nightmare Tarot, which, that's another one. Check it out. It's neon pink and blue, and it's scary cats and skeletons. It's wonderful. I love it. And it was totally the vibe for this particular party. That wouldn't fly at the birthday party I was at earlier, which was wine and charcuterie and good friends gathered in somebody's home. That earlier party was intimate and close, and it was such a different vibe. For them, Animal Totem was perfect. It's fun, it's bright, and it's accessible, and a lot of the people I read for aren't tarot card readers themselves. So accessibility for the person viewing it is a really big thing for me. I want them to be able to look at the card and also get a sense of what's going on, even if they can't fully interpret and articulate it. I like decks where somebody can take a look at the Five of Swords and see, oh, okay, is there some kind of conflict going on here? Because that kind of indicates that's what's going on. Sometimes a deck like the Deviant Moon makes things look a little scarier than they actually need to be. That's also why I love busting it out right around Halloween and right around any kind of darker, spookier, more subversive event because, well, it is a little dark, it is a little spooky. It's very fun. And there are also certain decks that I only bring out when I know the event is going to have a lot of other readers at it, or at least people who are a little more well-versed in tarot. Because I've just noticed over the years, when I'm reading for the general population, people tend to gravitate toward more traditional looking decks. Whenever I give people an option, oh, which of these decks calls to you, they almost always choose Rider Waite Smith, Morgan Greer, anything that's kind of more like that. People aren't choosing the pasta deck, which I find a little unfortunate because I love the pasta deck. And in fact, the only people who are picking things like the pasta deck tend to be other readers themselves. I've noticed the more well-versed in tarot you are, the more likely you are to be totally game to get read with a silly deck that might say, hey, you've got the 10 of spaghetti. I would get read with the pasta deck. I also really like pasta. But, I mean, I get it, because say you're coming in for a tarot card reading and you want to take it seriously. Maybe this is something that you've never done before or you've done once or twice. You want something that feels authentic and genuine, and maybe at first glance, something that's a bunch of rainbow cats or plates of pasta doesn't really fit this image that you have in your head. If you're a reader, or if you're just getting into tarot reading, I encourage you to explore, and we didn't even touch on the Thoth and Hermetic decks and that whole lineage in this episode, mostly because I'm not familiar enough with it to really speak intelligently about it. But if you find yourself drawn in that direction, follow it, check them out, give them a look. And as I mentioned earlier, tarotarts.com is a really good place to take a look at decks. Even if you end up buying a deck from your local mystical shop or something like that, it's a good spot to see what a deck looks like before you commit to it. That's about all I have for you today. I know this one was kind of short and sweet. I thought, following up after the most recent ones that were a little dense, a little heavier, let's just talk about finding decks and finding decks that resonate with you, because I wholeheartedly recognize Rider Waite Smith isn't going to resonate with everybody, and it does make a lot of assumptions about your culture and your background that if that doesn't fit you, you might kind of be like, is tarot for me? Well, yeah, tarot is for you. Tarot is for everybody. Don't let yourself get turned off by if the first deck you meet isn't really a great deck for you, because guarantee there's a deck out there for you. I just saw one that I wasn't aware of. It's all horses and horseback riders, so if you're a total horse girl, get that deck. You'll probably love it. But yeah, go check it out, go find the deck for you, and have a good time with it. Open it up, play with it, read with it. That's what the cards are for. Anyway, catch you next time. As always, if you like what you heard, please leave me a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps quite a lot, so every single one of you, I appreciate it. Also, if you want to give me a follow on social media, my handle is its_OMG_tarot. I also mentioned it a couple times ago, but I'm going to mention it again. I do have a new ebook out, and it's called A Year of Moons. As I'm recording this, it's an Aries new moon tonight, so if you're looking for any better time to grab a copy of a book that's got 24 tarot spreads, one for every new and full moon of the year, check it, get it. And if you do any of the spreads, tag me on social. I'd love to see what you get. Alrighty, talk next time. Bye-bye.